Hello, I'm Noel. This is Antonia from Boxtail Soup Theatre Company. This is another Boxtail Scoop. And today we're going to have a little bit of a look at our further progress on Hansel and Gretel. And obviously, as you can tell, we're going to start by talking about the set and what we've been doing on the set building front.
We have to be careful because the set model, as you can probably tell, is made of pizza boxes, as we like to do, but consequently it can fall over pretty easily, so we mustn't breathe too heavily.
We've already knocked it all over several times.
Yeah. The first thing we did then this week was we went over exactly what we want to have for our Hansel and Gretel set. Obviously, as you know, we've already built some of this because we used it in the R&D week. However, we had, as much as we had discussed the sort of back line of set, we hadn't firmed it up. And last year, obviously, we made A Christmas Carol, and this year Hansel and Gretel has to kind of dovetail with Christmas Carol performances.
Yeah, so both of those shows are going to be happening sometimes on the same day, but we're running both of them at the same time, and they're both happening in the same space. So, like you say, if you have a look at the Christmas Carol set, then you can see that there are some fairly big pieces, most notably the big door that goes at the back.
So I'll put a photograph of that up now so you can see what we're talking about. And it's that giant door that Noel had a nightmare making, but that looks fantastic, which is very wide at the top and narrow at the bottom. So it creates quite a difficult shape potentially to then have in the set for this one.
Yeah, and the crucial thing really was whether we needed to strike everything, and by which I mean remove everything from the stage, in order to then put the Hansel and Gretel set up. And if that wasn't necessary, if it was feasible for us to be able to leave the door in the position for both shows, then that was ideally what we wanted to be able to do.
Not least because the door itself is an excellent piece of engineering by you, but it is slightly fragile. So if you have to keep moving it, as we found last year, because we had to keep striking it at the end of every show because we were sharing the stage with the pantomime, it does start to get a little bit wonky. It's best if it can just stay where it is.
Yeah.
Not least it saves us time and effort having to lift quite a large piece of scenery off stage.
Yeah. I mean, it's the nature of building anything like that has to be temporary and able to be taken apart again. If you could, screw it all into place once and for all, then you wouldn't have a problem. But because you have to be able to take it down and move it around, it does make it all a little bit
but if it can stay
flimsier.
stationary, it's pretty good. So that was what we wanted to work with. We wanted to work with the idea that we would leave the door for Christmas Carol in place. We're going to take you will have seen there's a Scrooge and Marley sign above the door. We'll take that away because that was just too much to have to cover. But we'll leave the door in place. So we ended up with, after a lot of sort of discussion and trying to figure things out, we've ended up with what you can see here in order to sort of cover the door, but also give us a nice focal point for the Hansel and Gretel set.
So just to clarify the way that we do this and why it's so important, you can see the door frame is behind us there, but what we really need to be able to know is how it's going to all look in situ and how it's going to work in terms of the size and scale and how it's going to work with the other pieces of set. So we have, from the Everyman Theatre, we have a basic floor plan of the studio, and that gives you the measurements of the playing area. So we were able to make this to exact scale, or near as damn it. So this is 10:1 scale. So the stuff that we've marked out on the edges here with cardboard is the exact area of the main playing space. And then all of these little models are made to scale. So this is Antonia and I here, these little guys here at the front. I'm just going to move them out of the way now.
Oh dear.
Oh, that was
That's
bound to happen,
Oh
wasn't it?
dear.
And then the back piece that we've got here is, in fact, you can't see it obviously, but we've got a cutout that is the same size as the door behind these trees to ensure that these pieces that we're going to put in front of it, we're going to be able to cover it effectively.
That was the practical side of it. And then once we'd done that, so originally Noel had cut this out, this flat piece here, and we didn't have the two little trees in front of it. I'm going to attempt to move them out of the way to show you what that's like. I was concerned, as were you, once we'd sort of started to chat about it, that this then looked quite flat, that you had this one big, very flat piece at the back. Because the door is quite a large and imposing piece of set, it was inevitable that whatever we covered it with was going to be the same. And I wasn't particularly happy neither were you, I don't think, with the idea of having this very flat piece at the back here. So what we then decided to do is to try and give the illusion of 3 dimensions a little bit more with it. So we then thought, well, if we made 2 smaller trees for in front, we can use the puppet stands that we made for A Christmas Carol to put these onto. There we go. That then you get that illusion of depth, which then helps to kind of actually draw you in to the middle, which is really nice. You're then drawn into the forest, and this, rather than being a practical solution to cover a piece of set from another show, becomes an asset and a really lovely focal point for the set of this show.
Yeah. And we had a debate about the practicality of it, because even though it's convenient for us to be able to cover that door and leave it in place, we don't want to do that at the expense of, you know, making Hansel and Gretel a worse show overall, or, you know, compromising that show just for our kind of convenience of not having to move that door.
Yeah,
so it was really important that we were happy with how that looked, and also that we found a kind of practical use for it. And in fact, because there is a little bit of space behind the door, we've then gone on to think about the ways that we can use that, and the ways that the space behind the door, the ways that we can use this bit of set then to help us in the rest of the show.
Yeah, so it'll probably provide excellent concealment for puppet stands and that kind of thing, which will help. And also it fills the back out. Otherwise, in the studio space, you've got a black curtain all the way across. We don't tend to use curtains, as in what do you call them, backdrops, so the word I'm looking for. We don't tend to use painted black backdrops in our show. It doesn't tend to be part of the design, but consequently you need to make sure that there's a lot of interest on that back wall, especially for a children's show, really, that it's not just a great big wall of black.
And I think then, given that these trees are movable and they will move around during the show, trees...
Well, they won't. Those are the puppet stand trees. These ones will move around. I
beg your pardon, yeah. These ones are puppets.
Noel's on a different show there.
These ones will move around and potentially move in and out, and obviously they will turn around to reveal the door or the house.
Yeah, you've got the house on the back here. They're those clever turning ones that Noel designed. How we had. Do you remember? I think we showed you in a previous vlog. Those are those ones.
And then we've also got some smaller pieces. There's a little tree, and a few of the little tree stump stools that we had. So actually, it'll look quite foresty, it'll look quite full if we want it to look like that. So I was really pleased with the overall look of it. And then the other good idea that you had that makes this look a little more interesting, and you can't see it on this cardboard model, but this will be made in fact in 2 pieces, so that you've got very slight relief, one piece in front of the other, so that it looks like there's 2 rows of trees in fact, and it just gives you that little bit more depth to it again, which helps with the overall look of the thing.
Yeah, so I think we're pleased in the end, aren't we?
Yeah, really pleased, and really pleased that works as well, because that does make a big difference logistically in swapping between the 2 shows.
So that was that. That was what took up, sort of a day probably of figuring out at the start of the week. Then we've started to cut out. You've drawn out all of these
bigger trees. All of these have been drawn out. These ones have been cut out already. Yeah.
So that's all in the works now, which is great, because it means that then we can have a look at it all once it's done.
And I can't overstate either how useful it is to make a model like this. I mean, you don't need anything fancy. These again are just cut out of pizza box card, but being able to do it to scale makes such a difference then when you come to draw out the trees and when you come to make the stuff.
And actually, it meant that's what helped us have the idea of putting those trees in front. Yeah. Otherwise, we just couldn't figure it out. We couldn't figure out what to do about this big flat piece.
Yeah, so it really is worth doing when you've got to build anything like that.
So that's that. We're going to shifty this out of the way now, I think. So we'll just pop them down. And then we've also been putting the finishing touches on all of our woodland creatures that we made. And I should stop calling them that really, because they go into a forest, so it's sort of forest creatures, but whatever.
Is there a difference?
I have no idea. Somebody can tell us that there is, and we will be pleased to hear your facts. We wanted to make sure that the faces, as we said before, the heads kind of tied in with the bodies. So as I think we've said it a few times, we wanted to put some of the fabric from the bodies onto their faces. So Noel done a brilliant job with the spray painting for their heads, and did an excellent touch-up job as well for, I don't know whether you want to talk about that at all, but...
Just very briefly then, I guess, because I think when we showed them last, we'd started to put some colour on them. But the difficulty is that obviously when you've got a lot of colours in the same area, you're trying to make sharp lines between them. And doing that, even with masking tape and marking everything off with the spray paint, it's quite difficult. You get a little bit of bleed between the two colours. So what I've then gone and done is basically just hand painted with a little brush all of these edges and neatened everything up, which actually makes a really big difference. It's surprising how much of an impact it makes, even though they're only tiny.
Oh my goodness, I think you've done
smudges.
an amazing job. It's fine, like they look so much smarter, and it just worked, because we were even questioning whether we'd put too many different colours on their faces before you'd done that neatening up, and now I just think they look lovely. And then finally I've just put strategic little bits of the fabric that makes up their bodies onto their faces, as you can see, just to make sure that their heads and their bodies go together as one entity. And we're really pleased with them now. We'll show you a carousel of all of them at the end of the vlog,
Yeah.
but we just thought we'd show you one.
Yeah, and it's lovely. It does exactly what we wanted it to, this, I think. But, adding this little bit of fabric makes that connection between the head and the body, so it feels like a cohesive thing rather than two separate parts.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're making them out of two different materials, and I think that's really important. So yeah, so that's our lovely owl, and we'll show you the rest in a minute. And then beyond that, we've been also working on the puppets of the witch and Ma. We decided not to show you them this time, otherwise the vlog would get very long, but we will go back to them probably next week, along with maybe showing you some more of our set progress. So it's all go here, but going quite well so far, I think.
Yeah, it's going great.
So as always, thank you very, very much for watching, and welcome to our new subscribers. It's so lovely to see some new ones popping up every week. If you are enjoying the vlogs, please do leave us a comment, ask any questions you would like. We would love to be able to answer them, and subscribe to the channel. And thank you very much, and we will see you again next week.
Thanks.